Hey guys, just to give you an introduction for what this week's lab is. First, you'll be doing some basic layout of a user interface for mobile devices with me in Unity. And then you're going to pop in and do one of these Illustrator or Photoshop tutorials. So you can pick kind of a normal one or a challenge one for either one. And these are making entire interfaces for, like as you can see here, they're making kind of a mock-up of an interface for in that case, it's like a sci-fi game. So we want to then, after you've made that mock-up, take individual assets like the buttons or the windows and export them separately so that you can put them into your game. And that's kind of lab part 3. So part 1, follow along with me and make the basics of an interface that has a little button in the bottom like an options button. You click it, whoop, and then an option screen comes up. Then part 2 is you look at some of the tutorials that I've provided. Feel free to mix and match, do whatever you want, and make your own buttons and windows with Photoshop or Illustrator. Export some of those assets, unique assets, so don't export like the whole window as a single image, because then it's not interactive. You want to export the things separately, bring them into Unity, and then follow along with me for an example of how to put it all together. Though keep in mind that I'm using my own assets in there and things will be different for you. And I'm always around if you have questions. Alright guys, have fun. Hey guys, how's it going? Today I'm just going to pop through and do some basic UI stuff. This will kind of be the first part of a lab. And then the second part of it is going to be, for the same week, making some assets that are going to go in here. I'll provide some resources about different Illustrator tutorials you can use to make your 3D assets. And there's also a video from last week that will step you through how to make it able to run on your device simply through, sorry for the beeping, my cord's a little janky, through connecting it to your computer and opening a program called Unity Remote. I just realized I was holding it off screen, but it's here. Yeah, there it goes. So you'll be running an app called Unity Remote 5, and all you need to do is connect your phone to the PC, open Unity Remote 5, and then in project settings, in the editor, you can have a Unity Remote section where, for me, it's any iOS device, but you should see an any Android device symbol as well, as long as when you installed Unity, you told it to do it with Android or iOS build included, build capabilities. If you pop over to that lecture I did last week, it's a couple minutes long. I stepped through like how to do that if you forgot to do it or if you didn't do it. So yeah, cool. Let's pop in. I'm just going to talk a little bit about canvases. This is kind of our, like I said, a bit of our first section of the lab for week 2. I'm going to make myself a new game object, and I'm going to call it menu controller. Typically when you make menus in games, they're all kind of juggled by the same canvas, so that you only have one canvas, and he knows the general state of things, like he knows what menu should be open, what panel, and he can open and close panels as he sees fit. Well, we probably won't be using it today, but if we go into scripts, I'll go into lab 2 here, create a folder. I don't know if I want to call it lab 2 in scripts, because we might use it in future weeks. So I'll just say UI, scripts, UI. Boom. I'm going to add a C# script in here, and I'm going to call it menu controller. If this were, I'm just thinking about my naming conventions. I think I'm happy with this. This is fine. I'm going to pop over here. Whoops. Well, it's opening it. Boom. Let me close these out. because we don't need them for this week. Boom, menu controller. I don't need these, so I'm going to delete the start and update. Just make sure that you don't accidentally delete your open and close brackets for the function itself, or the class itself. Start and update are the functions. That's why I misspoke. And I'm just going to plop menu controller onto the menu controller object. Probably won't be using it today, but in case I feel inspired, maybe I will for funsies. Then I'm going to add a UI canvas, and I'm going to call it menu controller canvas, and he's going to have a lot of sub canvases or probably sub panels within him. And you see this event system. Event systems are how UI works in Unity. When I click on something, the event system is the thing that takes the click, they call it a raycast, or they draw a line from wherever I clicked with my finger or with a mouse. They draw it out and they say, did it hit any event capable elements? Those are, for example, a canvas. There usually is a graphic raycaster on them. And that graphic raycaster is the thing that says, hey, I can be hit, these are my dimensions, and when I'm hit, I can do something. And the buttons and all those types of things are what control what it's done. Anyway, since I have an empty game object called menu controller that has a canvas within it, I feel safe putting the event system inside of the menu controller. And then I'm going to make a prefabs folder. Prefabs. A prefab in Unity is sort of a saved instance or a saved setup of some sort of scripts and game objects and all that thing, so that when you might want to make another one, it's easy. For example, if I had a bunch of enemies in the game, I'm not going to uniquely make 1,000 enemies. I'm going to, especially if they're all the same, I'm going to have a prefab of one enemy and just create that prefab through code and spawn it. You know, that's how you spawn an enemy, is if you have that enemy saved, what he looks like, and you create him a bunch of times. So a prefab is like a saved game object so that I can use it many times. If I drag it in again, boom, now I have a menu controller 1 and it looks exactly the same. So I got my menu controller, and my menu controller is a prefab, so that if I want to spawn it or despawn my UI, I can. Like if you're in a loading screen or something and you want to take it away. If I want to edit that prefab directly, you don't edit it in the scene like this, like changing stuff around, because now that it's a prefab, it has saved elements on the inside of it. I want to go edit the prefab itself. I could do that by double-clicking this, or by clicking the little arrow here. Boom. So now I'm actually editing the prefab itself. I could have also double-clicked this, and I'll go to the same spot. You'll notice that now it says menu controller up here, and not like hierarchy or whatever it'd say, or the name of the scene, I would assume. So if I hit back, yeah, it says the name of the scene at the top. So I'm double-clicking this, or I'm clicking here. Since I clicked here last time, I'll double-click this now. Boom. Now I'm editing the prefab, and I know I'm editing the prefab, and we're all good. So, popping into that menu canvas, I want to make let me see if I can zoom out here. Scene. So this is my prefab. Z is forward, and it's pointing that way. So I'm just going to orient myself from this direction. I'm tapping F, by the way, to kind of get a better zoom in on it. And so that when I hold Alt and move my camera around, I'm kind of moving from a pivot. Anyway, what do I want in my menu system? So canvases in Unity, they are kind of percentage-based, anchor-based. So when I place an element in my UI, it has pixel sizes and all that kind of thing. But a pixel size isn't very helpful when you have elements that can be shown on many different screens. Like, you know, how many Android devices are there that this could show on? So if you try to offset your image, so like I'll add a button here, for example, UI button. So now I have a new button. If I were to say, okay, I am going to be in, I want to be 300 units there and 500 units there, and then I want to be, I want to be toward the top of the screen. So okay, oh, I'm stupid. To negative 500. Okay, now it's the top half of the screen, and I gotta think. So the problem with that is when I change my monitor size, like if I were to be playing on a different phone, it looks great in Editor. Maybe it looks great on this particular version of phone that I'm running, but if I were to keep like changing my aspects, you see how like sometimes it might be getting cut off. Sometimes you don't even see half the element. Sometimes, yeah, it just gets wonky based on how you are viewing it, and that's why we use anchors instead of strict pixel placement. I'm trying to remember which one I actually want to do. Probably that one. I'd have to Google the actual dimensions of an iPhone 8. I'm not particularly sure of it off the top of my head because they're all different. But it doesn't really matter. I'm going to instead take my UI and make it anchor-based. So this button in particular is going to be the button you hit to open the options panel. So usually those are in the top right, top left. Let's search for some mobile UI, game UI example. I'm popping over here. I'm just looking for some inspiration. I see, okay, top right. That's got top right. Oh, that's bottom right there. So yeah, one of the corners, because that's where your thumb is naturally going to go, but it's not taking up space in the center play area. That's very typical. And I'm just looking around, seeing. This is what you should do too. When you want to do something, you go, okay, what do other games in my genre do? And options are generic enough that every game's going to have it. So, okay, so this is the main menu in Pudding Monsters. That's a good name. Pudding Monsters, the main menu, it has a bottom center. That's cool. It's grouping those elements together that are kind of other than play. So you have the play is the big beefy button because that's what you want your users to do. You want them to play the game. And then you have some alternative, like, oh, maybe you want to sync with Facebook. Maybe you want to edit some options, like change your language, or maybe you want to look at the leaderboards. Cool. Oh, I like this. I'm going to save that for later. Okay, so yeah, let's do bottom right corner. Bottom right corner. So instead of doing it through pixel placement, I'm going to do it like this. Boom. Go to the bottom right. And what that's actually doing is saying my anchors, let me just double check I'm honest. My anchors, it says it's 0.5, 0.5. Now it's 1, 1. My anchor is getting moved to the far right. 0 is left, right is 1. And I want my Y to be, I feel like I want it, am I upside down? I might be upside down. I believe this is correct orientation. I noticed that my green is pointing up, and I know that 0 is the bottom and 1 is the top. So I want it to be bottom right. That would be anchors are 1, 1, 0, 0 for the 0 for the Y, 1 for the X, and that's because the anchors are based on your full screen's perspective, or in childhood elements, the perspective or the resolution of the sub window. So it's based on the anchors of its parent's size, and the parent in this case is your game screen or the resolution of your phone. So bottom right corner, cool. And if I were to zero out my position and my height here, you'll notice that it is indeed in the bottom right corner. Top left puts me in the top left if I were to zero out. And I believe I can hold Alt and Shift to, yep, Alt and Shift will place me there. You'll notice that it also, when I held Alt and Shift, it made it so it doesn't go to the center of the object. That's because before the pivot was in the middle. The pivot is the pivot of the element. So my element, his interpreted center, is here. But much like in animation, when you go, oh, I want my pivot to be the feet of the character. So when he walks along, he's walking along with his feet first as a root. Sometimes in UI animation, you don't want the root to be the center of the object, you want the root to be somewhere else on the object, so it's easier to animate and easier to position. So I want my pivot to be the bottom right corner, which would be 1, 0? I believe it would be 1, 0. Let's find out. So that's 1 and 0. And I already noticed that my elements, it went to the bottom right, that symbol, so I know that I'm correct. Boom, boom. And now I have my button in the bottom right-hand corner. Obviously, I want it to be more of a square, so I'll make it 100 by 100 pixels. And this, depending on the size of your screen, you might hit issues of like, oh, looks 100 pixels is really small on my phone. If that's the case, and you want, you also have the option of making it percentage based. So instead of my anchors being from 1 to 1 here and making it, an exact point, I can make it from 0.9 to 1 on the X, so 0.9 and then 1. And then on the Y, instead of 0 and 0, I'd make it 0 and, I don't know, 0.1. And that would make it take up a region. So regardless of your monitor size, it's always taking up 10% of the bottom of the screen, because 0.9 to 0.1, or 0.9 to 1. So that would make sure that it always stays a consistent size. For me today, I'm in a forgiving mood. I'm going to make it an exact pixel size of 100 and 100, or because art usually is in powers of 2 to reduce the what's the word I'm looking for? Rasterization, like when it's trying to render an image to a device or to a monitor. If it's not in a power of 2, it has to kind of stretch it out to meet the difference, just because how monitor resolutions work. So having a 100 by 100 image sometimes it is not probable. Nobody's going to give you an asset that's 128 or that's 100 by 100, because the way that you save a PNG always is benefited by powers of 2. I can go into that more if people are interested. And now it's pos X, pos Y. I don't want it to be right at the corner. I want it to be a little off. So now I can do a little pixel offset for the fine positioning, the fine tuning. So negative, 20 and 20. And now I've got myself a cornered element that's not based solely on pixel placement. It's based on anchors and then pixels for making sure that everything looks nice. So let's look at that in my game. I'm going to hit play. I'm curious if I can click on it yet. Oh, I heard some disconnect noises. Oh, and whoop. I got to get myself a new chord. So let's hit play. Did we work? It didn't work because this stupid cable. I'm going to close Unity Remote, open it again, press play. Let's go to Edit, Preferences. Ooh, I meant to say Build Settings. Any iOS device. Okay, I believe that means it sees it. I'm gonna hit play. It was working before I started my my screen, of course. But lo and behold, I can click it. I'll fight with this stupid thing later. In fact, why don't I fight with it now? It's a learning experience. Popping back into my game here. I am saving, just making sure everything is saved. Closing out. Every day I say, oh, I'll get that new iPhone cable tomorrow. Okay, so I've opened up Unity Remote. I am going to my Unity here, and let's open that up. I was kind of interested by that name, Cave Boy. That is cute. Okay, if I press play, will it just work? Nope. Let's go to my game settings. If it keeps not working, I will deal with it later. Oops. Edit project settings. Oh. Yep, doesn't see it. So now I will close it, unplug, replug. Boom. Any iOS, oh, it sees it. It sees it. Okay. Play. And okay, yeah. So can I click on the button? I can click on the button. You see how it's flashing there when I press down? It's becoming a little darker. So click, click, and that's because I'm clicking it on my phone. And as you can see on my phone UI, let me see if I can see that on my screen here. Yeah, it's not the same resolution, but you know, it's in the bottom right hand corner. It has some pixel offset, and it's working. And gotta get that. Gotta get a new one. Okay. I might even have a new cable in the office. And we'll see. We'll see. Cool. So let's continue. So we have this little guy down there, and when I press him, he opens he will open a menu. So let's put that button, instead of just being right inside of menu canvas, I'm going to create an empty object here. I'm going to call it main game screen or play screen. This is the screen that's like happening while you're playing your game, where you might want to open up your options. And I'm just kind of thinking about what I want to call it. I'm going to call it play panel, because usually I call everything panels. And play panel, I don't want it to be, I'm going to go to my scene view here so you appreciate what's wrong. Play panel, why is it always coming in upside down? That's weird. Play panel is, you'll notice it looks like a little, I'm pressing T, by the way. If you hit W, it gives you like a 3D world view, but if you hit T, it gives you the dimensions of your current object. So notice that play panel is only 100 by 100 pixels big because it's not set to the full object. I will do that, but I'd first like to show that thing I was mentioning earlier about anchors being to their parent. So if I put this inside the play panel, and then I zero out these positions again, because remember, it is anchored to a location, but it tries to retain its last position. So its last position was down there. I'm going to set it to 0. And now it's set to the bottom right-hand corner. So if I move it off of its X, it kind of goes away from the corner, and Y, it goes away from the corner. If I were to scale it up and down, like I'm going to, boom. If I scale it up and down, it scales up and down from the corner. But it's the parent object is not sized to the appropriate size, which is the screen size. How big is my actual screen? So I could do that two ways. I could set my X from 0 to 1 and my Y from 0 to 1, and then zero out everything else. And that has made me the size of the screen, because from a percentage standpoint, I'm going from 0 to 1 on both, and then I am zeroing out my offsets. That's how you do it. Or, you know, the quick way is holding Alt and Shift and then clicking that bottom right-hand box. That's telling it to stretch to both dimensions. To both dimensions. Now my play button, I believe I had a 20 pixel offset on both sides, except negative 20 because it's on the right-hand side. Cool. And here we are. It still looks the same. Good, but it's inside of a play panel. Play panel, this is going to be some future work, but if we go inside of UI, not only do we have a menu panel, menu controller, but a menu controller controls a series of menus, right? So I'm going to make myself a C# script called menu panel. Each panel is going to have a class called panel. So I'm going to have a play panel, and he's going to be of a panel. A panel can open and close. We'll do this eventually. Void public void open panel, so that any panel can open and any panel can, you guessed it, close. Boom. And just to keep track of things, when I open a panel, I would expect that I would turn myself on, and that, to do that, Bob, phrasing, right? Turn myself on. To do that, I would to set myself visible. There's a better way to say it. To do that, I reference myself with a lowercase g game object. Last week, you saw a transform dot position. That is getting my own transform. And today, we're referencing game object dot set visible, set active. I do Unity and Unreal work, so I get a little confused sometimes, but we're all good. True. And what are you going to do when you close panel? You guessed it, false. So whenever he's told to open, he'll open. Whenever he's told to close, he'll close. And we'll do a bool is open, and I opened it with an underscore as a programmer thing in my head. Underscore means that nobody else can reference this variable but me. It's mine. And I start closed, and then I'll eventually open. Let me just double check myself here. I'm thinking out loud. When I am set to open, then is open would naturally become true. When I'm set to close, is open would naturally be set to false. And now that boom and boom. Now that I have a boolean, which is a true-false value, that is always tracking whether or not I should be open, I don't need to hard code set active true. I can say set active to is open. And now that these are both doing the same thing, I could technically make a third method, because they call it copy pasta. I'm doing the same thing in two different spots. I'm setting active to is open. And if you do that enough, and then you have to change something down the line, then you have to change everywhere where you've done it. So usually you would break this out into its own method, but I'm not getting into the weeds, because that's not what this lecture is about, or this lab. Okay, so now we have an open and a closed panel. It'll turn itself on and off. And just to be fancy, I'm going to add a void awake, which happens right when it's turned on, right when it's activated, because if we forget to turn off every UI before we start, then it would have a boolean is open set to false, even though it's technically open. So I'm going to say is open equals game object dot active self. Let's find out. So see that one says deprecated, so I don't want to use that. That is not deprecated, but it's in the hierarchy, not of itself. So I'm going to say active self. Yeah, boom. Active self. So now, right when he wakes up, he'll figure out if he's actually currently open or not. Because otherwise, it would be an inaccurate boolean. Since if you left the object on when you started playing, then even though it's set to false by default, it would actually be open. So that's why I am doing this. Okay, so awake, he sets that guy, we're all good, boom. And so now play panel, he's a menu panel, and we're going to have options panel. Create empty, options panel. And we're going to do the same thing again. I'm trying to figure out why it's grayed out a little bit. Usually that happens because I'm focused on a particular element. Oh, is it just a gray background? I think it's just a gray background. I think I'm just crazy. And we have the same problem where it's like, oh, it's not taking up the whole screen. So I'm going to hold Alt and Shift, and I'm going to hit there. Maybe you don't want to take up the whole screen. With an options panel, that's feasible. Maybe you only want it to be 50% of the screen. But I like to start with the full screen and then go down from there in the children. Okay. Alrighty then. So now we have a play panel and an options panel. The options panel will feasibly be open when you press the options button in the play panel. This button here, zoom in. You're not just going to say button, you're going to say options. Because when I press it, I want to open it. Options panel. He needs to be of type menu panel. Huh. And he's going to have some elements inside of him. Let me turn off play panel just to give myself better visibility. I learned this last week from one of you guys. If I hit the little eyeball here, it turns it off in the editor, but not in the game, which is useful. But I'm grumpy and old, so I'm going to do it like this. All right, so now we have this options panel, and I want there to be a window within it that represents the options panel naturally. So I usually do things by nesting, so that when, because I'm a bird, no, so that when I have objects and I want to move them, they all move at the same time. So I generally always drill down. I never have two objects at the same height unless they should be, like if I'm animating something and they need to move separately from another. Okay, so first step is to create, I already have an empty object and that represents my panel. So maybe this will be the panel. A panel is exactly like an empty object except it has an image on it, which is just a default background. But I don't want that panel to be the full screen. I want that panel to be maybe, I want it to be centered, I know that. So I want it on the Y, I definitely want it to be something like on the X, excuse me, like 0.2 to 0.8, so 4 on either side, percentage points, 40. And on the Y, I want it to be, I don't know, you'll notice these little guys are moving as I move those around. I want it to be squishier, I want it to be squatter, I want it to be maybe from the bottom, I want it to be like 20% up, 0.2 and 0.8. And so now I've made it the same dimensions on all sides, and I'm going to zero these out. I'm just hitting tab, by the way, to go to the next thing. And so now that's my panel. It's going to be a small part of the screen. I could make it bigger, I could make it smaller. And this assumes a portrait mode thing. And the reason I'm doing this is because, you know, mostly when you have an option screen, you have looking around for one. Yeah, like it like takes up a portion of the screen. It's not the whole screen, so that it feels like an overlay that you can get rid of. But Justin, it doesn't look like an overlay because we wanted to kind of obscure what's behind it. That'd look cool. So at the same level of the hierarchy, I'm going to add an image. I'm going to make it take up the whole screen by holding Alt-Shift and hitting there, or by setting 0, 1, 0, 1, and then zeroing out these guys. And because things render in order of when they appear, I'm going to drag this image behind. And this image is a background type of thing, overlay type of thing. So I'm going to call it BG_overlay for background overlay. I'm going to color it black. And I'm going to make it semi-transparent, like 0.2, 0.1. So when this menu is up, oh, maybe 0.2, 0.3, yeah. So now it fades out the things behind it. So if we were in game, I'm going to drag in, where's my camera? So here's our camera. I'm just going to drag in a cube to show what I'm talking about. 3D object cube. Going to move them back a little bit. But I put the, oh, whoops, I put the cube in the camera. Example cube. You don't need to do this part. I'm just showing what I mean. So now I have this object here, and moving it back a little more so it's not so like in the way. So now, you see that cube down there, now when I go back to the game, there's kind of additional user feedback from it becoming brighter. I might even go more, I might even go like, the panel, maybe I even have it as a full opaqueness. And the overlay, I have it as like 0.4 or Make it more extreme. 0.8. It might be a little much. I'd want it to feel nice. I don't know. So then, like, when it appears, I could do something cute. If I put my game like this over here, and then I go to my scene view, back over here, and I take my menu controller and I kind of scroll it, squish it. That's actually not appearing on that side. That's no fun. I think maybe if I do it from here. Yeah, see how you can like whoop, and like it overlays the background. So that's why I sometimes like having a little dark background. It doesn't always need to be there, but it's nice. All right, and now we're going back into the editing of the menu controller. And remember, this is a prefab, so I'm going into the prefab by clicking on this. Boop. Otherwise, you're just editing the instance, and then if you make another version of the UI, then it wouldn't look the same. And if you ever do find yourself accidentally editing this instance, you can just right-click and apply to prefab. If I were to make changes, I believe that's a thing I can do. I haven't done it in a while because I'm perfect and I always remember to edit this. That's not true. Okay. Anyway, so I have my element, my options panel, and he has a BG overlay, and I'll call this FG panel for foreground and background. And inside the FG panel, I'll add another button, UI button. And we're going to place it just like before, except in the top right. So we're going to put it up in the top right like that. And I believe if I hold Alt, it'll change the pivot point as well to being the top right of the element. But I'll just do without holding any button. I'm just going to click up there, moves up there. I'm going to zero out my elements. And then I go, oh, it's centered. So I want it to, on the X be 1 to be its far right, and on the Y be 1 to be its top corner. So that's all correct, I think. In my head it's correct, but on paper it looks wrong. Oh, and I want my pivot. Yeah, I meant to talk about my pivot. Yeah, I meant to talk about my pivot, not the anchors. Might be, because these are the anchors. Boom, that changes your anchors, and then I want my pivot to be 1 and 1. Yeah, now that looks like the correct pivot once I've zeroed off my position. I want it to be a square as well, so I'm going to say, I don't know, 100 by 100. Boom, boom. Or 128 by 128, because that's probably the size of the texture I'm getting, or 56 by 56. It doesn't super matter. What really matters is the art coming in are units of 2, so that when Unity's trying to compress it, it doesn't get blurry. The size of it once it's in game is pretty flexible. I assume that I'm getting a unit of 2, so I'm reflecting that here. I'm just going to make it have a letter X in it because it's going to close this window. Boom. And now, as you can see up here, there's a little X. Maybe I'll make the font a little bigger. It's already centered, that's good. I'm going to make the font 28. I could also say fit to best fit, and that'll size it up. You guys are going to be putting in some art. Okay, so now that we have some basic art in here, or some basic button in here, I'm going to then again move it a little off. I don't know, 10 and negative 10. Actually, is it positive, positive? Might be positive top. Negative 10, 10. Boom. Oh, that's what's wrong. I'm moving the text instead of the button. I was like, oh, I would have expected that to work. Negative 10 and negative 10. So now it's offset from the top corner. We're looking good. I'm going to make the button's color red. And I need to make everything else kind of match that as well. so that when I'm highlighting it, maybe it's a darker red, or so it's dark red, but then when I highlight it, it gets a little brighter. When I press it, maybe it gets a little whiter, like it's hot. I call it gets hot when you bump up the sat. Selected color, that's when I've clicked on it. After I've clicked on it, I'll have it stay the normal color. So I'll need to deal with that. And probably the best way to do that is hit this little eyedropper and click on this. The disabled color, sure, gray, if you're not allowed to leave for some reason. I'm going to go to my text object here, set the color to where's my color? There's my color. To white to make it a little more obvious. Cool. And I forget if Unity supports shadow just right in here. It does not. So I'm going to add component. I believe it's just called shadow. Yeah, I could do that, or I believe there's an outline as well. I'll do outline. Zoom in on it. As you can see, it's already there. Boom, boom. I'm going to make it like 5, negative 5, 2, negative 2, negative 2, and 2. That's okay. Let me try shadow. Let me see how shadow looks. I believe shadow just pixel offsets in a direction. Yeah, so maybe 2, negative 2. Oh, negative 2. Or I could just make it go straight to the right. Like that. I don't know. I don't know. What do I like more? Hard to say. So that's looking pretty good. I got my close button. I'm going to press play, see what it looks like. Boom. Am I still connected? Oh, I'm still connected. Gotta be very careful. There it is. So as you can see, I do see my window. I have a little X button there. If I tap it, do I see a tap in here? Let's find out. You see how it's getting brighter? Boom. Alright, so we're looking good. Naturally, the resolution is a little lower because it's actually like streaming the video to here. So it's not going to look beautiful. But once we sort out how to build 2 devices and I get a feel for what devices you guys are actually building from, we'll be good to go to actually make you able to run it there. And like getting through the fees and stuff, because if you're on Apple, then it costs like $100 or something to become a developer. Anyway, so now that we have our other menu, we have 2 menus in total. We have, well, 2 panels in total. We have our options panel, and we have our game panel. And the game is just not updating as fast as the scene. But not to worry, because that should be here anyway. Anyway, okay, so we've got our objects here. And when I want to set it up so that when I press on the button here, which is going to be the options button, options, BTN, or BTN options, you'll notice I do that type of thing a lot. Doesn't really matter. And the other one is going to be the BTN underscore close. Maybe even close options. The reason I do this is so that when I want to find all my buttons, I just do that and I find all my buttons. And the reason I might call it button underscore close options is so that if I have multiple close buttons, because you have like an options panel and an avatar customization panel, and they all have close buttons, and I would see 1,000 button closes and I wouldn't know which one I want. So that's why I might call it button underscore close close options. It's just so I know later what it is when I'm looking at it. Okay, so we've got that set up. I go to my button options here, and I open up button. I say, okay, on click, I want it to do 2 things. I want it to open the options panel. So I dragged in options panel. I want to access its game object, and I want to set it active to false, or true. But I made a menu panel script, which can do the same thing. and it's going to be open panel. Open panel. Boom. And the reason that this is better than just turning off and on game objects is because open panel might do other things, like load the previous preferences. Like if they set their volume level, then now I can go to the save system and find where my volume is, and I can set game object active to true. I can do more than just setting the game object. I'll need to set it all up in here. And I'll do the same thing for play panel. So play panel, when my play panel's options button is clicked, then I feasibly want to close this panel and open the other. So I'm going to say close the play panel and open the options panel. And I'm going to do the inverse on button close of the options. Button close of the options is, I need two elements. First I need to, first I need to close the options panel. Boom. And it's able to see close panel because it's a public method. Just make sure in your code that you made it public and public. Maybe serializable would also work, but make it public. Make your life easier and make it public. I think I still need one thing. Yep. Close that panel and open the play panel again. Boom. The other thing, like, so for example, I would have open panel for the menu of the play screen, because maybe it also needs to say load the last score, because maybe there's a score in the top corner, and when you've left the screen and come back, saying open panel tells it, oh, I need to load all that stuff again. So that's why it's important to separate specific functions from the buttons. Like the button doesn't actually go in and turn on and off a bunch of stuff. He just tells other people, he gives them suggestions about what they should do, like, hey, play panel, can you try opening? Okay, and then like take care of whatever it is you need to do. I don't need to care about anything else. I just say open panel. So boom. Now I'm going to hit play. Options panel is closed and play panel is open. So when I press play, I should see that, which tells me I edited this guy. So that means that I accidentally edited this object outside of editing my, let me just go in here. Right. So that means that I edited my prefab, or my game instance of the prefab, as opposed to the actual prefab. And that's why it's annoying to edit this thing by mistake. Yes, I think I could like hit right click and revert all values to prefab and all that type of thing. I know that's an option somewhere. Prefab, yeah, revert all. I could have done that, and it reverts anything I accidentally changed. Usually, and if I hit select here, it'll jump right to the prefab it's using. Just to be sure I'm not crazy, I'm just dragging that back in. You don't have to do that. So now, if I were to hit play, am I zoomed in? Yeah, I am. Okay. Scale should be, oh weird, I'd expect it to let me go to 0, but we're dealing with it. So now if I press on this guy, boop, it opened that up. And if I press on this guy, boop, it went back to the main screen. And now I'm going to do it on my phone. Options, ha. And close, ha. Nice. It's looking good. Looking good. That's using that Unity Remote 5. It's handy to let you know what it's going to look like on device. But if you make UI like this, where you actually do make everything anchored instead of pixel positioned, then even if you're not working on device, you still have a much better idea than how it would be otherwise. And then I think you can also add, like, if you know your specific phone's resolution, then you can add it. Anyway. So that is part 1 of the lab. I hope that showed you how to do some good stuff. Part 2 of this lab, which you should do immediately after, I believe, I haven't fully decided on it. I'm going to get you guys feeling on it on Friday. Then I'm going to have you watch a few tutorials from making in-game UI, and then I'm going to have you customize and make these screens. Go in and make these screens and retain that behavior so you can still close and open. So it's kind of, I gave you the tools, and then now it's up to you to plop in elements. There are some things that you'll need to know about, such as sliced textures. So let me open up Paint here. So when you have a button, and you don't know how big that button's going to be, because remember, I positioned this by percentage, then you don't want a texture that's literally your button. You want a texture that's repeatable. So I have my button texture, which is actually probably going to be a square of some sort. And then I tell Unity to slice it like this. And it repeats these elements over and over again until it reaches the desired width and height. And then it applies the corners at the last pixel sets. So, for example, if I go to my scene here, these buttons, let me click on you. These buttons are actually sliced textures. You can even see it down here, the dotted line. And that's why you can make the buttons any size and they don't get all weird and stretchy. So you'll probably be wanting to make a notice it's 32 by 32, a unit of 2 size. Anyway, that you'll notice, let me go to the, I want to know if I can edit it. I can't actually edit it, but usually they're squares. If you want to make your own asset and you want to make it stretchy, I invite you to work with it in that manner. If you don't want to deal with that quite yet and you're not feeling comfortable messing with it, that's fine. Just make sure that when you're interacting with your scene and you know the resolution of your button, you do one of two things. If you don't want to do the slicing and you just want it to look nice, you could either, one, actually enter in the size of your object, like, oh, I made it 256 by 128, and then if you drag in your picture here, then it'll look exactly 256 by 128. Or if you know the general area you want the button to be, but you don't know the size that would translate to, there is an option in your image. So right here. So let's say you've dragged in your image, whatever it may be. I don't know if I can drag in something else. I don't know. Knob. So I've dragged in my knob, and I say, I want you to be preserve. There's a preserve aspect. Where is it? There. Now when preserve aspect is on, even if I'm a bigger button, no matter what size I am, the image stays correct. But if you do it like that, then you might want to mess around, because now you'll notice the text is off. Though in a perfect world, you wouldn't have text. Your text, your buttons in mobile stuff are usually icons without text. They're usually like a gear if it's for options, so that it's kind of universal. No, you don't have to translate a bunch of stuff. People just know a gear is options, a floppy disk for some people still know is save, even though nobody's used a floppy disk in like 20 years. But yeah, so that's how you could go about that. I do invite you to research sliced textures a bit. It's really important to know. And I'm happy to talk about it as well. Maybe I will in my second recording, where I kind of talk about adding some art assets to this scene. But yeah, that was the basic setup, and then now it's up to you guys to look through Illustrator tutorials that I will provide. I'll show you a few different ones. Let's say, hey, pick a theme that you like from one of these tutorials, follow through with it, and then put it in this UI, and then make it your own. Do something fun. That's your lab. And that's the second part of the lab. But cool. All right, have a good one, guys. Hey y'all, so I just want to now step through. I made these assets years ago. They're just little 8-bit, actually I think they're 32-bit pixel art, where they're tiny because they're only 32 by 32. I'm going to bring them into my game, and I'm going to put them on my object. So when you finish your Illustrator assignments, I would expect you to be able to export those elements as their own thing. So each button is a button. Each if you have like symbols or textures like that, then you would end up with, let me look at my art, let me look up sprite textures, pixel art. You would end up with like, everything as their own thing. If they're not perfect squares like mine, that's fine. You just use specific pixel sizes to match. So let's do it. I'm going to pop over to Unity here, and I'm going to add a new folder. I'm going to call it Art. And my Shift key is not working. I'm falling apart today. Create folder UI for user interface. I'm going to drag in some things. Let's give myself a little X. Boom. Let's give myself, where'd it go? Sprite textures, art, UI. And I'll add these two buttons. Boom. You'll notice that they look not quite right. And that's because they are not yet set to be sprites. They're set to be default texture imports, but I want them to be UI. So I'm going to change them to UI, and then I'm going to hit apply. Boom. So now they've all been applied. I can double click, I can look at them, I can appreciate them. I can go into their textures themselves. I could slice them should I want. So I could say sprite mode single or multiple. I believe if I looked into it, I could recall how you set things to sliced. I don't need it to be that huge. I'll leave it. Why not? That's saying when I save this to the library, which would then, when I build the game, it builds it out. What should these resolutions be? Because usually you have a really big resolution that's shrinking it down. But I have a 32 by 32 image. Making it a 2048 by 2488 texture isn't really going to help anything, so it's probably worse than anything. Since I am an 8-bit style instead of Mitchell, I'm going to do, or actually instead of bilinear, I'm going to do point in the filter mode because I want the colors to be precise. I don't need it to do like any cute blurring or anything. You do want blurring if you have like a very complex image, because then it can smooth it out so it doesn't look as, we call it jaggy. We in the industry, I as a person call it jaggy, little jaggy. Okay, yeah, so alpha is indeed transparency. That's true. Sure. Okay. So I felt like this used to say sliced. I might have to set it to multiple and then say like is sliced somewhere, but I'm not going to worry about it for now because I do already have square elements on a plopidin. This sliced would be a neat thing to show you, so I could have it, actually slice itself up like that and be cute. But okay, so I'm going to go to my button here. I'm already in my prefab, and the button options is going to be a little UI sprite. I'm going to drag in orange button. Actually, yeah, orange button. I'm going to do orange button. Stop scrolling. Stop scrolling. Boom. Now I've got my orange button. Looking good. I don't really need it to say options. I could have a logo. Do I have a, I'm just checking my art asset pool over here. Do I have a little wrench? I don't have a little wrench. So I'm just going to make it go options and make it might have to Google how to slice something up again. Sliced. This image doesn't have a border. Let's pop in. Let's open up the hood. Sprite editor. No sprite editor window registered. Please download 2D sprite package from package manager. Whoopsie daisy. So, package manager, window, edit, window. Package Manager. Did I really not download that? Unity UI. I feel like it's very unlikely that I somehow did not install the package manager. Now I'm going to Google around. Sprite editor Unity not found. Windows Sprite Manager 2D Sprite install. Add Unity registry, 2D Sprite. Install. Wow, it's so bad UI. Okay, so install. Boom. Cool. I'm very surprised that isn't just built in, but maybe they're transitioning to a new UI system, so maybe this is getting phased out, so they don't want to install it all the time anymore. Totally possible. Boom. Okay, so now when I go back and I click on here, Sprite Editor. Hey, border. So now I'll do, I don't know, 6, 6, 6, and 6. And that gives me some corners, but I think I want to go a little higher on my bottom, 8. And my top is looking okay. So I'm just looking at the repeating texture here. It looks good, and it's just going to stretch it around. So I'm going to accept this, apply. So now I should have properly sliced this guy out. Let's click on button. I'm going to set him to sliced. He is, cool. So now when I make him bigger, it doesn't stretch. It actually, see how it still looks, see how the corners aren't being stretched out? If it was not stretched, or if it was not sliced, then it would do this and it would look bad. That's why sliced is a handy thing to have. I want it to look a little beefier, so maybe I'll make, I think I make it, what is it, 0.5 or something? Can I even do decimals? Oh, I can. 0.1. Oh, that's looking so beefy. I do like beefies, but maybe not so beefy. That's looking pretty good. I don't want it to be so tight that you can't appreciate the corners. Cool. So I've got my options, and now I can tell the options to be sized to the space. If you want a custom font, you download it and you plop it in where you want. So I'll have art create folder fonts, and I already know the font that I want because I have it in that handy dandy this thingamabob. Assets, art, fonts. Oh, missed my mark. Oh my gosh. Classic Justin. Okay. Upheaval is the font name. I'm popping it in here. You can use whatever font you want, whatever works for what you're doing, or whatever your Illustrator thing had. And notice that even if I had many buttons that all kind of looked like this, I only exported one image because I use an image multiple times. I'm saving space. Saving space. So I'm popping over to my button. I've got my Arial font, and yucky, I want it to look professional because I'm a professional bro. Do I want... I don't know the difference between the two. It's probably the file type. I probably offered two file types. I didn't actually look. .ttf and .otf. You artist people probably know the difference, but I only know that TTF means true text file. I don't remember what OTF means or why I would ever want to use it over the other, so I'm just going to use the true text. And I'm going to size up my options to be a little beefier. Instead of, I think I had the auto size enabled. Font size, rich text, best fit is now on. Cool. And did I add a shadow to it? I didn't. Let me add a shadow. Shadow. Nice. Let's make my font color a little, I could do white with a black background, or I could do black with a white background. I don't know. I'm going to do white with a black background. Boom. And then my shadow that I added by hitting add component and then typed in shadow. Let's make it 5 and -5, -3, -2. Look at that. Don't that look good? Don't you feel good? Don't you look good? I don't like how my slice is looking down there, so I'm going to pop back over there. I don't know which setup you're going to have. Maybe you don't need to slice your textures. If you had a specific sized object, then you would just simply say, I want you to be 200 by 100, and then you'd be done. If you know that your texture is 200 by 100, and it looks good in scene, but I like to do things a little more procedural, and I like to have flexibility about how big my phrasing again, 2 labs in a row with phrasing. I like to have flexibility about the size and ratios of my art. That gives me a chance to make it look okay if I slice it. So I've got my options here. I wanted to go to the image, and I wanted to fix the sprite editor to the fact that I have a larger bottom than I do a top to like give it a depth type of feel. It gets exaggerated by me having an extra texture there. So let me change my border. Instead of 8, let me 6. Let's see what happens if I do all 6s. So I'm going to look at that button and hit apply. It's not even noticeable. Okay. Then I'm going to set it back to 8. Because 8, I know, like just looking at the texture, I see that I have a color tone change there. So I'm just going to leave it. Just leave it. Leave it, leave it, leave it, leave it. Oh, you got to know to leave it. Okay, so now we're back here. And since my functionality is already put in, when I press play, it should just work. Boom, works. And you can do that for everything. This was an image, and I could pop over to that to the options panel. I'll turn it on for now. I'll play your game. F. Okay, there. I'm going to take my BG overlay because it's the background overlay, and I'm not going to do anything because what I actually wanted was the foreground panel. I don't want to use background anymore. I want to use the blue panel. Maybe I wanted the background to be blue and not miss. Boom. Notice how it looks ugly and stretched and bleh? Well, if I hit sliced and I remember to slice it, sprite editor, and we'll do the same numbers. 6, 6, 6, 8. Looking good. Boom. And now I got a little background panel. Looks nice. Obviously, there's more of a button-y type of art, but whatever. If you made it in grayscale, then, like if I made this button grayscale, then I could have multiplied a color over it and made it whatever color I want. But since now it's like blue and then I'm multiplying red over it, it doesn't make it pure red. So it's better to start off from like a white tone base image. So you can make whatever color you want, or like if the user is colorblind, you want to have the customization to be able to change all of your assets to be different colors depending on like modes that they set. So that's why sometimes it's nice to have grayscale buttons that you then color in real time. Anyway, so we've got that, and to make things match, you know, I don't think I need to do much with this button because, you know, it's just a button. But hey, I'll make it have a yellow option. I'll click on my button close. I'll put this on top of it. And if I really wanted, it looks like red times yellow is close enough, because it is technically, it's orange and I'm multiplying red over it, so it's not actually these pure colors. But to me, it looks pretty close. You know, obviously, in a real world, you would be making them to actually be the colors you want them to be, or making them grayscale and multiplying colors over them later. I'm going to go to my text here, center and center. I'm going to make them the font that we want. The font that we want. Oh man, that's looking nice and chippy. Chippy toony. Okay. Boom. Gonna turn this back off. Gonna hit play. Boom, boom. The other part of most of the tutorials you're gonna have, they'll have made other buttons in those tutorials. I invite you to place them in your scene, however it makes sense depending on it. Like, oh, maybe they should go in the options menu that I have you open, or maybe they should go in on the actual game screen if there's like a health bar or something. I invite you to play around with fonts that you like, and I invite you to, if they had like text boxes and that type of thing, working the text boxes into the option screen in a nice way. I won't go into UI text fields yet, like UI, where is it? Am I crazy? Input field. Input fields are how you would eventually do text fields, because that's the system that lets you like click on it. Let me pop in. So now I can like click and type. However, in Unity, these work in a very kind of weird way, but you could edit the image to have a background, and then edit, I'll make it yellow just so you can see it, and then like go in, and if you want to play with it, but it's kind of a little finicky when you're like trying to place it and stuff, but I invite you to try. I invite you to try. But yeah, so now I could have a custom text field that I can actually interact with, and you could interact with on your phone if I had it turned on. Do I have you turned on? Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Huh? Come on, baby. I just want to type on it and show like, oh look, I'm typing. Boom. Nothing. Window. What was it? It was edit project settings. Any iOS device. It sees it. Okay, it sees it. I'm quitting the app, see if it sees it anymore. It still claims that it sees it, though I know it shouldn't. I'm going to open up Unity Remote 5. I might have to do a thing where I close and reopen. If I do, I'm not going to bother, but because you've seen it work before. Not going to bother. But yeah, then I could like click in and type and stuff. Obviously, this would probably be very small, and I'd want to make it a little bigger. Don't make things bigger just by scaling them up. That looks bad, right? Do it by doing stuff properly. Actually giving it like proper pixel widths and all that, like 320, 60. Make all the texts, including the placeholder. What's the caret? I don't actually know. Oh, that must be the blinking vertical line. I'm gonna pop into my text, and you probably want it to be vertically aligned. This one too, vertically aligned. Make it font size, I don't know, 20. Same for this. 20. So now when I press play, it should be a little more manageable. I doubled everything, yeah, a little more visible. Depends on what you want to do. I ain't gonna stop you. But yeah, so that's just kind of a primer of how to start working in those assets. And I invite you, whatever it is you made, to, in a group or on your own, start working it into this scene and see where you end up. I invite you to make it complicated. I invite you to make it cool. Have fun.
Hey,
Hey y'all, I just wanted to give some feedback about some of the projects coming in. They've been great. I really like the variety that I've gotten so far. I wanted to give some pointers and some tips. This isn't going to harm anybody's grades who've already put them in, or anybody who will put them in. But these are just suggestions that I can provide that are for best practices. So, for example, I love that in this I can click music on and off, and that swaps between stuff, and then I can click the button up here, and I can click the options, and it opens up. And let me hit reset, I get this. However, so there are a couple problems that I noticed with this implementation from a developer standpoint and from an artist standpoint. So, for example, the stats panel is a single image that doesn't have these sections blanked out, and that has those sections baked into the texture. So what I mean is these white boxes should actually be separate elements, maybe in a horizontal layout group that I explained in during the lecture, that will allow you to have as many elements as you want. Like maybe we get rid of one of those panel types, maybe we don't. And these gradient outline panels are separate per object. So for example, the options panel for the foreground is its own object baked into the texture, and the trying to find another panel. I think the reset panel, if I open this up, is also its own texture. It would be better if it's difficult because this one's a gradient, so I'm not sure the best route to do it, other than to make them all the same aspect ratio and like alternate between two sizes. But it would be better to have just that gradient and the black with the three yellow spots, the three yellow like almost like rivets. I'm not sure the visual style what it's going for in that particular tutorial, but it looks good. Having those, oh, thank you, Chivalry 2. I don't care. Oh, okay. I hit the X, but we're opening anyway. Okay, so it would be better to have those as two separate elements, maybe one small window and one big window, like the options I know is its own. Where is it? Here. Remove the text, because then you can add the text in as a text element, like right-click UI text, so that you're saving space. You don't have to have as many images. That's a problem for mobile, especially, is the size of your exports. The same goes for these buttons. You know, these are all the same button style. They're all basically yellow with a gradient. So it would be better to export the buttons on their own, a single button, just without any text on it. Get out of here. As a single texture, and then using that texture again and again while putting text over it in Unity, like right-clicking. Oh, and right here, text. And right now it's empty. So it's better to have the texture exported as the button on its own, and then putting text over it. I'll do a quick example just to show what I mean, and it applies for everything for space-saving reasons. But other than that, I really like this implementation. I like that it's so interactive, like things work when I press on them, and these buttons are not baked into the image. They're actually separate images, the red X and the checkbox. Maybe it would be better to have the back, like the red circle on its own, and then have a custom font that you put in for space saving. I don't know, so you can have an X or the bracket backwards. That's neither here nor there, because you could use these in many different spots. There are other efficiency things I could recommend, but the primary ones are the top bar at the top. I would definitely recommend having the gradient with the black as its own panel exported, and then so you can like slice it into whatever you want and be efficient, and then having that white box be its own element that you place 3 of them in a horizontal layout group, and then maybe tie those icons as like anchored pivots on the left hand side of each, so they're all their own separate things, so you can reuse a lot of assets when you want to when you want to recycle your art style in different places, it just makes your life so much easier, and it makes changing things and being agile about changing elements really fast. So just a recommendation. So I just figured I'd step through this particular project. Maybe, oh, one other thing. So these menu panels, that's a great idea for going through each of these panels, because I would consider this a panel. I would consider if privacy policy opened it up, I would consider that a panel. The credits is a panel. I don't want to click on it because it has text in it that identifies the particular student whom I'm using. But the music on and music off and these types of things, these are not panels, these are buttons. So I agree that having a script helper is good, but you might want to do something like creating a separate object, which is very similar to a menu panel in that it can turn something on and off, but making it its own thing, because these buttons are not panels. So it's poor communication to developers to use these scripts in places where they might not belong. So for example, I might create a C# script, call it menu button. I'm just brainstorming here about a potential route for making something similar to what we're thinking about here. Do not recover. Come on. I'm going to open up menu panel 2 because I'm basically going to do some similar stuff. Boom. Is open. Boom. So I'm thinking about this. I don't really want... I'm going to do inheritance. Let's figure out how to do inheritance a little bit. So I'm going to take this button. Do button behavior is going to be a public method. I don't want it to do anything. It just does its thing. It's a button behavior. I don't know what it's going to do because its children will do different things. I've created a script, called it menu button, and I've added a public void do button behavior. However, I want types of buttons to be able to override this particular function and do their own thing. So I believe I want to use public virtual void do button behavior. Virtual means that it's a function that other types of buttons can use and change and do their own thing. So boom, I've made my method. I did remember to stop, right? I did. I'm a good boy. Okay, so menu button. I'm going to pop over to music button on and off. And I'll use music button. It starts checking if it starts on or off. Let's find out. Probably starts on. Okay, so I'm going to use the on button. And I'm going to replace this with a new script, but it's not going to be menu button. It's going to be, well, I'll do menu button for now just to show. The menu button, I open it up. Well, prefab. The prefab. Boop. I'm in my prefab. I go to my menu button on. I'm removing this and I'm adding menu button. And now if I go to my button, these two should be messed up. Yep, that makes sense. I'm going to drag music button on. I'm going to have a function and it's going to say menu button do button behavior. Boom. Okay, so now when it's clicked, it'll do some behavior. Doesn't matter what it is, because it's generic. So now we're going to make a type of button. I'm going to make a folder in here. I'm going to call it buttons. Boom. So menu button. Well, let's call it menu buttons just because buttons, this is more specific. It's a type of menu button. I'm going to pop in here, create a C# script, and I'm going to call it menu button toggle underscore menu button. It's going to be a type of menu button that specifically toggles. So let's open it up. Yes, that's just a Macintosh thing. Thank you. I'll give feedback that it's very negative. Okay, boom. I just drank coffee, can you tell? So I'm making this of type menu button. Boom. And all I'm going to type is the word override, and I should see what I want. Override do button behavior. So that means my parent is a menu button. My menu button has a virtual do button behavior. I'll just have debug.log doing basic behavior. Boom. And now I have a button that is of type toggle, and it will do whatever it normally does. Maybe this does some basic action. And then it does a little something more. And what should it do? I think it should swap between two different textures because this is a toggle button. So let's do a Unity using Unity engine.ui because I want to have access to sprites. Public image, that is the image component attached to my object. So button image component. And now when I save and I go back to Unity and I click on button options, I click on button on. I'm going to remove button, this guy, because I made a new script called toggle button. And now he wants an image. Where's your image? It's that guy there. So let me just drag this image into here. You could also drag it from here, from music on. You could do it 1,000 different ways. I think I could hit that and like find it, but that's a little more awkward. I'm going to make sure that it still knows that I want it to do its toggle behavior. Toggle menu button, do button behavior, do button behavior. Am I blind? Am I being blind right now? Toggle menu button. Do button behavior. There it is. So now that I'm back over here, I have two textures I want to swap between: public, sprites, toggle on, and toggle off. I'm going to have two textures. Public bool current toggle is going to start off as, I don't know, probably, I don't want it to be public, actually. I don't want anyone to know except the button to know whether or not it's true or false. And current toggle, that's why I put the underscore, by the way. Just like with menu panel, I had that underscore for is open because only the menu panel should really know whether or not it's open or not. Nobody else needs to know. Nobody else needs to know what this toggle value is. It will report to whoever needs to know when something changes, but we are not there yet. It's going to start off as true because it's the music starts on it true. Void awake. I could do current toggle equals, like get the player settings. I'll just add a // maybe grab player settings and update current toggle to match, but we don't have any player settings yet. And now I can say button underscore current toggle equals not current toggle. That's basically saying whatever you were, be the opposite. If I was true, become false. If I was false, become true. And now I can say button image component dot sprite equals if, so I say there's two ways I can do this, the long way or the short way. I'm going to show you the short way because I'm hyped up on caffeine. Current toggle as a question. Is current toggle true? If it is, then use toggle on. If it's not, that's what the colon means. Otherwise, do toggle off. This only works in some very specific situations where you're setting something equal to something, that you can do a shorthand if statement. The other way to do it, if you want to do it the other way, would be if toggle then and then else, if current toggle then button image component dot sprite equals toggle on And I'm going to rename this to toggle on sprite for clarity. Toggle off sprite for clarity. Boom. And let's also have down here, otherwise, if I'm not on, then button image component at sprite equals toggle off sprite. So this line here is just a faster way, not like computationally faster, it's just like easier to type out than doing all this. Same thing, if you're comfortable with the ladder, do the ladder. If that makes it more readable for you, I just like this way because it takes up one line. For something easy, like if true, then this, else do this. It's just easier. If I had more behaviors going on, like turning off and on, like text and stuff, maybe I'd do something else. But let's also have, yeah, let's do that. Public text toggle text. And I'll have toggle text dot text equals I believe it says music colon on. So I'm going to say music colon plus, and I'm going to do another shorthand. I want it to be on if it's true and off if it's false. So current toggle question mark on, otherwise off. And because I, just like with menu panel, there's a chance where like the settings might be off in the beginning. I want to make sure that all my sprites and stuff are looking good right when I start. So I'm going to extract this into its own method. So public, it's going to be private. Void refresh toggle button view, because it's just how it looks. I'm going to put it in there. I cut it and I put it down there. Let's see if I can get this done before work. Okay, so now we've got that toggle button. It's going to say music on or music off. Okay, so now I can hit refresh button here, refresh toggle button view, and I can also do it down here whenever I hit that button. I'm just thinking how I want to do this. Boom. Now, this is its own button that does its own thing, and I don't need to open one button panel and close the other because menus aren't, or buttons aren't panels. So I don't want that behavior. I can get rid of music off, and I want just music on. So I'm going to open up my Illustrator file. I'm going to zoom into one of these. Let's take this. Boom. And then I'm going to export this to a texture file. Ooh, when was the last time I used Illustrator? Export for screens, I believe is what I want. And I just want one of these old buttons. Can I deselect all? Oh, that'd be nice. I want this one. Oh, I bet it's this. Let me check. Yeah. I just want that. I'm gonna rename it to music, or button BG, because it can be used as many times as I want. So export access, it doesn't have to just be for music. So here it is, button at 8 times, because I exported at 8 times resolution. I'm gonna drag it into here, into my art section. Sorry if I'm moving quite fast. I'm in like 3 cups of coffee in here. It's of type UI, default, boom. And that should make it look nice. Apply, boom, there we go. And I want to go to my sprite editor. I want to slice her up. Let's see what we got here. So it looks like 256. Yeah, 256 on the right. And 256 on the left, and maybe, is it going to be the same? Oh, well, that's too much. 128, 128, 128, 128. That looks pretty good. 128 pixels because the size of my texture. So I'm slicing it up so that I have my corners split up in case I want to be able to make my texture any size. So I'm looking at that gradient. So the gradient is what makes it difficult. If I knew exactly which pixels that gradient stopped and started at, it would be easier, but I'm just kind of YOLOing it here. But the point will still stand. Let's pop over to my options panel. I'm revealing it just to be able to mess with it. Whoop. I'm going to my music button on. Oh, let me click you. I'm noticing that its positioning is a little funky monkeys, and that's fine. We'll get through that. But I'm going to pop in. I'm going to change. If I had the right font, I would use it. I don't, so I'm going to just use Arial. I'm going to drag button BG onto the image. Boom. I'm going to specify that it is sliced. I'm curious why it looks like that when I already specified it's a sliced image. I probably just didn't slice it properly. Let's pop over. Let's open up the hood. Right, editor. I said, let's go crazy. If I said 256, boom, boom, and I hit apply, would that make it look different? Yes, it does. Okay, so let's getting there. Wow, I'm so hopped up right now. 140. I've been drinking decaf for like a year. I'm just trying to get us to looking like a good slice here. Maybe 330, 330. Apply. That's getting better. Okay. So normally I'm used to working with square images. That's one of the problems here. 460 by 460. How's that looking? And these should be the same. So I'm going to say 190 by 190, top and bottom. Hit apply. Ooh, we're so close. So let's do 500 by 500. Hit apply. Okay, that's good enough. That's good enough. I could keep messing with it, or I could export it as a square so that it slices properly. Sliced images are typically squares to make life easier. But now, if I wanted, I could make it different sizes, and you'll see that it doesn't. If I were to go and make it not sliced, simple. Oh, is that flipped around? Maybe because I already have it set to sliced. You'll notice that it's retaining its... maybe I'm crazy. I'll leave it like this. It looks good. That looks good. 1. I'm going to go to my text field. I'm going to... Oh, if I squish it like this, will it get weird? Oop. Yeah, I feel like that's sliced. I feel like this is slicing it. Doesn't matter. Sliced. Yeah, should be a square. If you want to slice, make it a square. I'll make it simple for now. Oh, right. I'm going to go over to my text. I'm going to add some text. So music :on. I'm going to say fit to best fit. Boom. I'm going to say bold. Bold. Where's the bold? Boom. Nice. So we've got that in. I'm going to turn my options back off, and I think everything should work the same, except I forgot to drag in. So if I click on music button on, it needs all these components. So I'm going to say your text component is this. My on sprite is going to be, I don't have sprites anymore. So I'm going to just keep it as the generic sprite. If we wanted, I could have done the music off sprite and the music on sprite. I'll show one and then I'll show the other. So if you just want to use sprite alternators, maybe you have a checkbox and a no checkbox, you would do it like this. I don't have text that I want to swap out anymore, so I'm just going to make toggle.text always equal to toggle text.text equals. If I was just using sprites, you would either delete that text element here, or I'm just going to make it empty both times. And I'm going to swap between my music off and my music on, which I noticed that they're swapped. Music on, music off. You can hit play, and I should see it swap. All right, it's playing. Perfect. So I'm doing, you see it saying doing basic behavior, and it's treating it like a button. It's doing what a button does, not what a panel does. Then if I do it the other way, if I say my toggle, and you might maybe even like just shift colors or something. Yeah, click on, I don't need to. I'm gonna pop over here. I'm gonna say music button sprite on, boom. Or excuse me, they're gonna be the same texture for each, but then I'm actually changing my text. I'm gonna pop over here, re-enable my text to say something different. So it'll be technically swapping the texture to itself in the background, is the same thing, but it will be now instead modifying the text. This makes you much more flexible. So if you realize you wanted to say something different, you can just change it from a string. You don't have to like actually output assets. So see how that basically works the same way, except it makes you able to change it on the fly. You just have to change it in the code. That's why it's nice. You could even have it say, because this is toggle menu button, I don't want it to say music specifically. So I can say public string toggle on text, toggle off text. String is what this type is with quotes. Now I can say current toggle, do the same thing. Toggle on text, colon, toggle off text. Again, that's saying, is current toggle true? Then use the text that I've typed in for toggle on. Otherwise, use toggle off. Here we go. Now they're there. And I removed all my music references, so now it's totally, it doesn't have to be music. It can be any toggle we want. And I'm gonna say toggle music colon on, music colon off. And it should work exactly the same way. Boom. Exactly the same way. And now I could even change it on the fly, like, this is your producer, and I wanted to say music with a capital M. And then you can say, okay, producer, that'll take me 5 hours, and that'll be $40, and then you just change that one element. But it looks like I can't change those during runtime. So boom, play. Music on and out to capital M. Easy peasy. That's why it's nice to have it separated on its own. And having the button as its own background now lets me do the same thing for all of them. So I think I'm still editing the prefab. I do have to go in a moment for work, but I could say, have my privacy policy. I could replace this texture with the button, boom, boom. And I'm saving a lot of space. Now I don't need 10 textures for 10 buttons. I just need one texture. It shouldn't be sliced because the image wasn't exported as a square. And it is going to be, the text is going to say, oh gosh, what was it? Privacy. I was having to say privacy because I don't actually remember what it said. I'm going to say fit to best fit. Boom. Make it bold. Boom. Obviously, one catch is if you have things of varying lengths of text, then if this went long enough, it'd start looking weird. Because like one is really big and one is really small. And the other thing you can do, so that you don't have to individually place each of these buttons, is create a container, create empty, button options, put all of these inside the container, boom. Size your container to being exactly where you want it to be. So for example, I believe that I want this to be, if I hit T, I want it to be right under the options, which looks about to be, I don't know, 80% above, 70, 75. Yeah, that ends right there. That's perfect. So I want it to go from 0 to 75, but it looks like I'm flipped around in my head. So 0 to 0.75 on the Y. That's going from here to here. Looks like I want it to be 0.1. Looks good. I could pixel size it as well. Totally up to you. If everything else is pixel sized, then do that. Anchors looks like 0.1, 0.2, 0.15. Yep, 2.85. Perfect. I'm gonna zero out all of these. Boom. And I'm gonna add a horizontal layout group. Oop, I'm stupid. I'm going to add a vertical layout group. Okay, so it looks like I put that button close in there. I'm gonna undo until I'm back to where I was, Justin, why'd you do that? 0, 0, and then I think it was like 20, 30, 30. I'll deal with it later. Button options, vertical layout group. Just pretend I didn't mess around with that button too much. We're good. Okay. Horizontal layout group. I need to make it 0.15 to 0.85. 0, 0, 0, 0. 0 to 0.8 or 0.85, 75. What it was. 0, 0, 0, 0. A little late for work. Cool. And it evenly distributes the 0.1. Looks good. It evenly distributes your elements across that. And I wanted to use force child expand width and height. That makes sense. I want it to be middle center. And that is how you quickly distribute a bunch of elements. So the things we stepped through, how to create textures for your buttons that can be reused across all your buttons instead of having specific buttons be specific textures. We stepped through how to add text to those buttons and how to, instead of relying on that panel script to swap between button behaviors, to make a button script and then a type of button, which is a toggle that can turn off and on stuff. I hope that was educational for best practices in Unity. Let me just make sure that everything still works. And it does. And that privacy is now its own thing. Privacy might open a panel, like a little browser thing or something. But okay, thanks guys, have a good one. And let me know if you have any questions or difficulties with doing that.